time for speaking, a time for silence, a time for seeking, a time for losing. The time of mourning is a complicated time, filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet. We begin our service with the recitation of psalms and prayers, thus linking Marty's life with the 3,000-year-old tradition of the people Israel and the eternity of God. I invite you now to join with me in the recitation of Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. A modern meditation. After a while, you learn the subtle difference between holding a hand and chaining a soul. And you learn that love doesn't mean leaning, and that company doesn't always mean security. And you learn that kisses aren't contracts and presents aren't promises. And you begin to accept your defeats with your head up and your eyes straight ahead, with the grace of a woman or a man, not the grief of a child. And you learn to build all your roads on today because tomorrow's ground is too uncertain for plans. And futures have a way of falling down in mid-flight. After a while, you learn that even sunshine burns if you bask too much. So you plant your own garden and decorate your own soul instead of waiting for someone to bring you flowers. And you learn that you really can endure, and that you really are strong, and that you really have worth. And you learn, and you learn. With every goodbye, you learn. Perhaps it's no mistake at all that the Torah portion featured this coming Shabbat, Terumah, is about gifts, special gifts, not just ordinary gifts. The word Terumah has the Hebrew word of romemu, of ram, of highness, something that's exalted. So these gifts are not normal gifts, but they're gifts that come from a very special and deep place, a place of gratitude. Terumah, gifts of exaltedness. God spoke to Moses saying, "Tell the Israelite people, bring me gifts. You shall accept gifts for me from every person whose heart is so moved." The directive is a departure from the gifts that God instructs the Israelites to bring earlier in the Torah. Those gifts are prescribed, usually involving sacrifice of an animal, a grain offering of some sort. In this Torah portion, each person gives whose heart is so moved, participating in the building of the tabernacle in the desert, participating in building a future of Jewish life. These are gifts of investment and love. These gifts are above and beyond the normal expectations. And in the end, the people, the Israelites, bring so many gifts that they need to be told to cease their generosity. We have enough. Our cup runneth over. Well, today, we are reminded of the gifts Marty brought to our lives. And the gifts that just by being here, we bring to him. He brought many gifts. And what he provided was a love of family, devotion to his people, the Jewish people, and frankly, just a true sense of fun You see, Martin Desatnik never really stopped being a kid. And so today, everybody's shaking their heads. So today, we remember him, we mourn, but we also celebrate his amazing life where he brought this joie de vivre to his life, this mischievousness to his life, this fun to our lives. So today, we remember him, a man who had a number of chapters in his life, living many of them. And here today is his legacy. Individuals who are connected to each other, not just through blood, but through respect and through friendship, all bound together by this man. The many chapters of his life are here today. The many gifts, the exalted gifts, the holy gifts, the sacred gifts, Truma. We are all beneficiaries of his holy gifts. And I know some members of his family want to share some memories. I'm going to first invite Samantha. I think she wanted to share some words first. Actually, you didn't ask for first, but I'm designating you first if you're okay with that. And then I also know Marla's going to share some words, maybe Tammy. And great to have Holly and Jamie come up as well.
Hi. No, I was not expecting to go first, but here we go. Surprise. Thank you all for being here. Growing up, I always saw my dad as that cool guy, probably because he reminded me of the Fonz, and later as Howard Stern. He had the best sense of humor and always made me laugh, but more than this, he taught me to handle life with a sense of calm. He never raised his voice at me and never seemed angry. He just loved. When I was around 9 one summer and I was told I had to go to camp, I cried and told him no. I was a pretty stubborn kid, so I put my foot down. I was not going to camp. Any other dad may have used the parent card and forced me to go because he said so. Not my dad. Here's how I ended up in camp that summer. My dad calmly said, "Okay, Sammy, I will arm wrestle you for it. If I win, you have to go to camp, but if you win, you can stay home for the summer." As the punk little girl I was, I thought, well, that's a no-brainer. I'm going to win. So best out of 3. I won the first round, but my dad knew what he was doing because the next 2 rounds he won. Of course he did. I was 9, but I didn't argue after that. My dad won fair and square. There was no yelling or grounding or forcing me to go. He was just that kind of peaceful dad. My dad told me once after some divorce drama and we couldn't see him and I was in tears that my sister and I were his little soldiers, and soldiers, they needed to be strong. He assured us he loved us, but to be strong and brave. Dad, I am trying so hard to be your strong soldier today, but I miss you and it's so hard. I will miss our talks and our laughs. I will think of you every day. Be in peace with Bubby and Papa. Thank you for loving all of us. Thank you for being so proud of us. I love you, Dad.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tammy, Marty's first daughter. I know that I'm where I'm at today because of my dad. He inspired me always to be the best person and to always make sure customers felt like family. It was the greatest feeling knowing I worked with my dad and my bubby and my papa. I look forward to work every day knowing I was going to be with them. Work was not really work. It was like no other job. To be quite honest, I never wanted to call off of work. For example, here's a little bit of my day. I would be helping so many with their orders at work for the next day delivery, or helping customers plan a party, or ordering products for customers' events. And every now and then, someone would walk in with a skirt. And yes, my dad would say, "I got this one, Tammy, so take a break." Laugh out loud. He really did do this many a time. Anyone that knew my dad knows he always liked to flirt, but in a silly way. It was just who he was, a funny, simple, down-to-earth guy. He always was the life of the party. Thank you, Dad, for making me who I am today, and I will always make you proud. I will miss you dearly, and I know you're with Bubby and Papa now, and I have 3 angels watching over me. Love you, Dad.
Now, Holly, should I read yours next? No, we'll try. I was going to be the designated reader, but I somehow managed to convince them to try to say what they want to say. Okay, so here. Okay, can you read?
Yeah.
My parents divorced when I was 4. I don't have a lot of memories of my dad really prior to that.
Other than what he told me. Unfortunately, we moved away, and I never saw him again until I was 11. So I'll start here. Meeting my dad again at 11, he had his curly long hair and a ponytail, and I thought, wow, he's cool. Not what I expected. He was remarried by then, and I was excited to have more siblings. Sisters, of course. Although I did spend time at his house when I visited my grandparents, I really didn't get to know him. I decided at 16 I would spend the summer with him, working at his store and trying to figure out who my dad really was. I enjoyed being with him. It was easy. Never any yelling or chores to do. Sorry, Mom. With Dad, it was always stories about when we were younger, or the cars he loved to drive fast, the guys he taught to shoot guns, or his love for beauty. Yes, he wasn't shy in expressing himself when he saw a beautiful woman. I think that's crazy that they both put something in. But it's true. I learned a lot about working hard with him in his store. Trust me, he expected more from me than some of his full-time workers. I loved to listen to him take care of his customers. He made each one feel special, no matter what they were buying. He had the best customer service, and I can truly attest to learning that from him. He did always seem to have the gift of gab when he was at work and in his element. I'm sure this is something I also learned from him. One thing you can be sure of, Dad loved all of his kids, and he never stopped talking about them. He loved his grandchildren as well, often sharing stories with me, most recently with every conversation we had. He didn't hold grudges and was a kind-hearted and giving man. After his illness a year and a half ago, he seemed he was making up for lost time over the years. Not purposely, just free from his depression. I enjoyed seeing his name pop up on my phone from time to time when I got too busy with life and he hadn't heard from me. And most recently when he would love to be on Facebook and like or comment on things we posted. I am glad I got to experience my dad the past year and a half in the happy state of mind. I'll miss hearing his voice, talking sports, and hearing his infectious laugh. Love you, Dad. Your baby, Holly. And Holly's daughter, Gabby, also wanted to share some thoughts, and so this next paragraph is from Gabby. And Gabby says, even though I wish I would have had more time with him, I treasure the times we spent together watching Indians games, hanging with Rocky, that's his dog, and eating ice cream. He's a huge part of the reason I want to pursue a nursing career, hopefully within the mental health field. I've wanted to be a nurse for a long time, but he specifically made me want to help others even more than I already did. Miracle work I'd love to partake in would be seeing someone genuinely happy and smiling after the pain they go through. Everyone deserved to see a smile like Grandpa's. It could be the highlight of anyone's day, and it's definitely a sight I will never forget. That's from Gabby, my 18-year-old niece, who will be graduating this year. Okay. Did I read everybody's now? Can I read mine?
Your turn.
Go ahead. Okay. Somehow I'm going to try not to cry through this.
God, it's long.
I know. Sorry.
Warning.
Be prepared.
If you want to stay up here, you can. Okay. Okay. It's hard to know where to start when you want to sum up a person's life in what seems like a fleeting moment in time. But I will do my best to paint the picture of Dad that describes him the way I knew him these last nearly 2 years. First, a little background for those who may not know our history. And even for those who do, it helps give context to the relationship we had more recently. When I was young, somewhere around 6 years old, my parents separated and ultimately divorced. At the time, I didn't have a real understanding of what was happening. We eventually moved to Lorraine, only an hour away. I had just turned 10.
I was probably not very aware of what it meant to move only an hour away for my dad, because what I did not know then was how much he suffered from anxiety and was quite agoraphobic, not really able to travel great distances from his home. And by great distances, I mean more than 15 minutes driving in a car. When my new friends would ask where my dad was, I would simply say I didn't have one. This was how I understood the divorce and moved to our new life. I lived near uncles and cousins now that I loved, and I turned to my uncles as father figures. And one of my uncles is here today. And I didn't give a whole lot of thought to my own father. Years later, when I was 16, I saw him again for the first time. My mom had reestablished a relationship with Dad's parents, our grandparents, Bubby and Papa, and it was the beginning of a new chapter. I'd like to say this is when my dad and I connected again, reunited as we were with this long-lost family, but instead, he was quite self-involved in his life, his ailments, his new relationships, his work, and at 16, I didn't really know how to connect then. I focused my attention on my grandparents, who seemed more capable of having a relationship with me, and we became extremely close over the years. And I maintained a relationship with my dad, but it always felt a little distant, not deep in the way a father and daughter should be. I continued to rely on other father figures, my uncles, my grandfather, even professors and colleagues, to provide the fathering I was missing from my dad. Nevertheless, over the years that ensued, my dad made efforts I wouldn't have expected. He managed to get to my college graduation, thanks to the help of my stepmom, Donnie. That was a feat to make a 45-minute drive with my dad, I'm sure. And he came to my wedding, which thankfully was just a few blocks away. And I'm forever grateful for this, since I now have some wonderful pictures of us together, some of the very few that I own and cherish. In 2017, Dad became very sick, really close to dying. He lost more than 50 pounds and he refused to eat. He thought he was dying, but in fact he was finally diagnosed with a deep, deep depression. He received a month of shock treatments, and miraculously his brain did a hard reset and the depression lifted. Over the course of the month of treatment, we realized he was coming out of the depression, starting to eat, smile, talk, tell stories, ask about family and friends. It's kind of odd, actually, at the time. He was making people around him laugh. He began to slowly gain weight. It was a miracle. And for me, it gave me my dad for the very first time in my life. We brought him home, and with the tireless, absolutely tireless support of my stepmother, Donnie, as well as her son, Chinawat, and the love from family and friends, he got well and he thrived. And a bonus to the entire situation was the opportunity to really get to know my stepmother, Donnie, and we feel like family now, which makes me feel even closer to Dad. I know I'm not the only one to have noticed the drastic change in his personality over this past 18 months, as he had an urge to call as many members of his family who would talk with him. He wanted to talk to his children and find out what they were doing. Did they like their jobs? Were they happy? What are their families like? He was asking about my children, Molly and Sophie. How were they doing in school, with friends and relationships? He was proud beyond belief of everyone. In all the time I had lived in Cleveland, and that's since 2003, he had not taken much of an interest in me or my children. Now he was spontaneously picking up the phone to call Sophie, ask about what she's doing, and tell her of his mischievous antics in high school, riding his motorbike through the halls, being chased by the principal. He did that. She enjoyed hearing these stories, and as she said, and this is from Sophie, I've always felt like Grandpa and I were cut from the same cloth. I'd have a bad day, and he'd call me on the phone or send messages along through my mom. I had really bad days, too, and I got through it. I believe in you. You're a bright kid. I love you, and I know your mother does, too. Maybe sometimes too much, he'd say. He'd go on, and at some point, I'd have to crack a smile. Grandpa Marty had such a big heart, and I'm really lucky to have been the recipient of so much love and positivity. I'm convinced now the source of these powers Grandpa derived from his constant supply of chocolate Frosties. I think they fed the sweetness in his soul. And I also was the one who provided those Frosties, by the way, and when I would walk into Wendy's and order 8 small chocolate Frosties at one time, they would always say, "For your dad." And I would say, yes, I am not eating all of these Frosties, but he did love them. He would also ask to see pictures of Molly in Japan, hear about her college experience, know that she was doing well. Molly told me she wished she had the opportunity to grow up with the grandfather he had become after his treatment, someone she could truly engage in conversation and share time with. She had a taste of it on her visits home in the past year, and I'm grateful she was able to see him as the big-hearted person he was. And she also wanted me to tell everyone she was sorry she's not here today. She couldn't come in from Philadelphia, but she's here in spirit. And Dad would tell me I was lucky to have such wonderful daughters. Suddenly, he could see outside of himself in his self-contained world. He rarely left the house, but with his newfound interest in what was happening around him, he began to follow everyone's lives and even follow politics. He also became the #1 expert on all things MLB, and if you don't know what that is, it's Major League Baseball. That channel was on a lot. Since Dad came home from the hospital in June of 2017, I've spent every day visiting or talking with him. I developed an interest in following the Cleveland Indians, too, during the 2016 World Series, and his illness came on the cusp of the following season. I watched as many games with him as possible during his treatment, and probably every game during his recovery at home, sometimes sitting on the phone with each other while he watched the game on TV and I listened to it on the radio. Many times I'd fall asleep during a late game, and he'd refuse to wake me up. He liked to watch me sleep, he said. Once, embarrassingly, and you may recall this, he even accidentally posted a picture of my sleeping on his Facebook feed. Thankfully, it was one of those ones that goes away after 24 hours, so I didn't have to delete it. And then he'd update me once I woke up on what I missed. I'd like to think it was both the treatment and baseball that cured him. Sometime this past year, Donnie had bought him a smartphone, and it was as if the entire universe had opened up. He could see what his kids and grandkids were doing, see photos of everyone. He loved it. And so did I. In recent months, when his dog Rocky became diabetic, I was there twice a day to administer insulin. And the moment I arrived, he was quick to update me on all of the Major League Baseball goings on, and especially anything related to the Cleveland Indians. But he would also read quotes from Facebook. I still can't believe he was using Facebook. He would share funny dog videos. Those were entertaining. Or tell me the latest U.S. or world news he read or heard online. He'd even become somewhat of a Royals follower, updating me on the latest news of Prince Harry and his new wife, Meghan Markle. I really couldn't believe this. I didn't have him pegged for a Royals watcher, ever. But with his depression at bay, he was able to focus on the world outside of himself, and that meant his wife, his kids and grandkids, and everything around him. For the first time since I've known my dad, he would actually play with his dog. On the weekends, without the need to rush off to work, I would stay and we'd have breakfast together, father and daughter, with our bowls of cream of wheat and brown sugar. I've aged a lot in the last year. We enjoyed the simple pleasure of simple food and each other's company. I could sit there all day just talking and laughing. In the relatively brief time since my dad came home from the hospital, I have spent more time with him than in the entirety of my life. It has been the greatest gift, speaking of gifts, he ever could have given me. I know what it means to love and be loved by a father. I never thought I would know this when I was growing up. I don't need to tell any of you who know me how much he meant to me. He was a joy to spend time with, to tell funny stories and laugh at the antics of our favorite characters on endless reruns of Everybody Loves Raymond, the King of Queens, 2.5 Men. I watched a lot of those shows. We watched Ken Burns' baseball documentary over and over and over again during the off season. We stayed up late on work nights to watch Indians games, and I will always think of my dad laughing at these shows, marveling at the baseball history we learned, and cheering with me through an Indians game. My life is forever changed because of him, and he will always be in my heart each and every day for the rest of my life. I love you, Dad. I know it was long. I cut 4 paragraphs out this morning. No. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Should I sit now? Can I just sit? Okay. And I got through that without water.
You did good. You all truly do him honor by being here and recalling the stories. Indeed, Martin Desatnik never really stopped being a kid. And born and raised in Cleveland Heights to Ann and Abe Desatnik, Marty loved baseball, basketball, playing pool, and of course, cars. He not only loved to look at them, he liked to drive them, to fix them. He once took apart his mother's car and reassembled it just for fun. And he loved to enter those cars into contests. But playing with cars was just one way in which he loved to tinker with things. He was always good with his hands, plus he enjoyed the social aspects of life, and that is what inevitably led him into his life as a small businessman. Taylor Road Beverage, Taylor Road TV, Taylor Road Discount, all of them. They afforded Marty the chance at working with his hands, being with people, helping others. Always geographically at the heart of the Cleveland Jewish community. Marty liked being a part of it and helping those who were in need. Taylor Road Discount found Marty catering to many people in the community for events at temples, churches, anywhere. And at his heart, he was mischievous, left an impression with those who knew this side of him. It is part of Heights High lore that Marty once rode his motorbike inside the school hallways. And in fact, even though Marty did not attend his 40th anniversary of his class graduation, it did not stop his former principal from regaling the assembled alumni about Marty's exploits. His youthfulness came out when he would drive one of his cool cars, the 57 Chevy or the Corvette or other cars that Steve McQueen made famous. Sometimes he'd even drive the car in an open backyard of a neighbor or testing how fast it would go on the city streets. And of course, not on the highways, but on the streets. He loved to show off his cars at shows, brought back awards from time to time. And thankfully, Marty had a good relationship with the police department. Actually, his love of guns would find him practicing shooting skills with local police officers. He built friendships with them as a community businessman and as a good neighbor. And truth be told, Marty's efforts to court Donnie were straight out of a teenager's handbook. You told me the story. I'm not making this up. Donnie and Marty met when she went into his shop because the locksmith next door was closed. She needed her lock fixed. Somehow he convinced her that he would be the one to fix her door's mechanism. The next thing she knew, Marty was at her house trying to fix the lock, but actually he made it worse. Nevertheless, Donnie got her lock fixed and discovered that this very same funny and crazy man was coming to see her at China Gate restaurant where she worked. The visits increased, and Marty eventually prevailed upon her, bringing Donnie a second act of her life she never, ever would have dreamed she would have experienced. They went on for many adventures, including trips that tested Marty's anxieties and, yes, his agoraphobia. There were times when they would cross into Canada and he'd get sort of shaken by the views of the bridge or whatever it might be, and she'd just say, just sit in the back, hide your head, don't worry. These anxieties that Marty had, you might think would translate into other parts of his life, but it actually ran counter to his comfort level as a social person. When he was in safe places, at home and at his business, he was in his element. As Chinua expressed, it was very clear that Marty was a real talker. He loved to converse. He not only liked being social, he was that way because he was curious about people and wanted to help you. He wanted to help. His business ethic was praiseworthy as he sought to give every person the same quality service. Moreover, he sought to help the less fortunate, sometimes hiring employees who had questionable pasts but were seeking to repair their lives. He wanted to help. He wanted to elevate their lives. Those were more gifts that he gave. We would be remiss if we didn't say that sometimes Marty was a little too trusting, but it was in Marty's nature to give the benefit of the doubt. And truth be told, whatever your past, many people today would tell you that one of their first jobs, certainly as family members, was at Taylor Road Discount. About a year and a half ago, Marty, as Marla mentioned, went through this intense therapy to deal with the many chemical issues that had held him back. And the therapy indeed worked. And it changed. Marla, it changed your relationship with him and so many others. He began to focus on others in his personal life like never before, asking about their day-to-day experiences, wanting to be a part of their lives in some significant way, wanting to lift up his life to realms that he might have not even imagined he could do. What a gift to him. The change in Marty indeed coincided with Donnie showing him how to work that smartphone, his introduction to a great big world of social media. And yes, he liked photos, and while this, like photos on Facebook, as so many of us are used to doing, and while that might not seem like a remarkable action, it was mind-bending for those closest to him that Marty would actually like a picture. He would actually think beyond himself to actually recognize and acknowledge somebody else's picture. Sophie indeed talked about his interest in her life and suggesting that she should be in a shampoo commercial because he really thought she had cool hair. And his sharing of old stories to connect with her. Marla, he talked about his consistent interest in her girls' lives and his real admiration for their connection, if not to Judaism, at least certainly to Fairmount Temple, which was gratifying to him, knowing that his daughters might be questioning their Judaism and questioning the nature of God, but at the same time to feel some kind of connection with an institution that believed in them and that really underlined the values of Judaism as we teach to them. His daughter Jamie, who is just up here, shared a memory with me that was significant to her. She wrote, "Recently I reconnected with my dad due to a family history project my daughter Hannah is doing for school. I called him a few weeks ago on his birthday, and he was beyond happy to hear from me. We talked for almost an hour, and we had another long hour talk a couple weeks later as well. He was so happy to share stories from his childhood. He told me about his paper route when he was about 10 years old and about all his Jewish and Italian friends he had in the neighborhood. He seemed really happy relating these nostalgic memories from his childhood, and I felt like I got to know a different part of him I never knew." Sounds familiar, Marla? I also have some of my own nice childhood memories of my father. As everyone who knew my father knows, he loved old cars. And I remember one year, I'm not sure how old I was, maybe 11, we got to ride in one of those old cars with him in the Memorial Day parade. It was so exciting to be part of that and wave at everyone in the crowds. We are so sorry for his loss. Baruch Dayan Ha'emet. It would be true to say that family members could share many, many more stories transpiring over the recent past that saw this other side of Marty emerge. He pushed more and more outside of his own world, got to see a community of family and friends who could enrich and nurture his life so much more than he ever imagined, bringing holiness to the ordinary. Marla will forever hold these memories, certainly of watching those tribe games with your dad. And in fact, you have become probably a bigger baseball fan than he ever was. And of course, those trips over to give insulin to his dog, almost always named Rocky, but many incarnations of Rockies, would result in countless innings of baseball. And today, we are here in many ways to show respect, give tribute to Martin Desatnik. He brought his gifts to this world, raised them up a little bit more as truma, as holy gifts to us. What a gift these last year and a half was for he and his whole family. it reminds us that even though we live in the same body in which we were born, there are many, many permutations of our own selves. We grow, many chapters that we encounter in our lives, never imagining that the next chapter could ever look like that. And so there's a lot we could take away from Martin's life, but we could really take away the fact that even in our old age, even as senior citizens, there's always something to learn. There's always a corner to turn. There's always another opportunity to raise up our relationships, to make them holier. Simply by being here, you offer your own gifts of thanksgiving to Martin, of gratitude to Marty for helping to enhance your lives, the lives of our community, the people in it. Zichrono livracha. May his memory forever be a blessing. And let us say, Amen. Just pause for a few moments as we consider the gifts that Marty brought to each one of our lives. If you are able, I'd like to invite you now to stand at your seats so we can chant El Malei Rachamim, the memorial prayer. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hamsei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShchina, במעלות קדושים מותרים, כזוהר כמזהירים את נשמת משה אפרים, בן אברהם וחנה, שהלך לעולמו, בגן עדן תהי מנוחתו. אנא בעל הרחמים, הסתירהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו, אדוני ונחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר אמן. El Malei Rachamim. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Martin Desatnik, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. You may be seated. As we turn to the conclusion of our service, I'd like to acknowledge Marty is survived by his wife, Donnie, his daughter Tammy and Emery, his daughter Marla and David, his daughter Holly, his son Joe, his daughter Jamie and Beryl, his daughters Samantha and Andrew, his son Nick, Angelita, his grandchildren Molly, Sophie, Gabby, and Alexandra, Tommy, Shaul, Rosie, and Hannah, Shayna, Naomi, and West. And of course, at this time, we remember his parents, Abe and Ann. Zichronam livracha. May their memories forever be a blessing. The family will continue shepherding Marty to his final resting place. We will be heading next to Zion Memorial Park Cemetery, and following the burial, the family will receive friends, the residence 2247 Edgerton Road in University Heights, 2247 Edgerton. They will be sitting today following services and interment until 8 p.m. and tomorrow, Thursday, from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. If friends wish to make a contribution, they can do so to the Cleveland Clinic Foundation or the Cleveland Indians Charities.